Okay, I'd like to call this February 15th meeting of the Monroe County Redevelopment Commission to order. Jeff, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Martin,
Present.
Commissioner Kiesling,
Yes.
Commissioner Shelton,
Yes, here.
Commissioner Cassidy,
Here, present.
and Commissioner McCarty. Here. Is Commissioner Tucker here? I do not believe he is, so.
Okay.
Commissioners.
Right, first item on our agenda is a presentation from RBB School Corporation. I'm going to come up to the front up here. Jeff has given us a copy of their presentation.
Oh, okay. Let me look for it.
We
It's,
can follow
Here, it'll
along
be
up here.
That's where
We'll
it's
share here.
it was from.
Okay. There it is.
Oh, yeah, you may. I'm not. Okay. Relegating you to this item.
Really?
Okay, introduce yourselves and let's get.
Hit the button in the middle or wherever.
Push the
There's a
button to make it
difference. Just
green.
look for something. There you go.
You're on.
Can you hear me now?
Those units are different than these units, so.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Jerry Sanders, Superintendent at Richland Bean Blossom Schools, and we have Jamie Miller, who is our Director of Ready Schools. And we have Megan Scott, who's a Ready Schools instructional coach. And then back in the back, we have Mariah Bruce and John Kerr, who are our elementary Ready Schools coaches. I'm not going to say too much tonight because I really want to give time for Megan and Jamie to tell the exciting things that are going on at our schools. But I just want to thank you again for the great partnership that we have with you. Not only the financial support, obviously, that we support, but we really enjoy these meetings because we always walk away with some a little bigger step for us because we feel your support and we just appreciate that. And your questions are always good questions. It gets us thinking and informs us where we want to go with the program. So thank you for the partnership, and I'm going to turn it over to Jamie.
All right. And even if we don't have our presentation up on the screen for viewers, I really am also going to try to keep my part short and sweet today with you all. So that we can showcase all of the great work that our junior high is doing. So as an instructional coach there, Megan really is just one of those linchpins between our elementary programming and then what we share often with you all about at the high school level with the obvious relevance to our workforce and the employability skills we're building. So the first couple of slides should start to look familiar as we're really trying to be consistent with the information we share with you and how we share that. We've talked to the building process of this foundation that you all created for us as a district and how we've developed Ready Schools and intentionally applied for state grants and then developed local partnerships on top of that foundation. And that really remains true. So that's just an update to what that pyramid, if you will, that visual there that you see looks like. And then similarly, our budget, this is just on the last 6 months since we last shared with you all that breakdown by budget line item, fund type, how we're using the funds. And again, just to reiterate, the importance of the financial support that you provide us is our roles. That's one of those pieces I've shared with that is really unique to your support that we can't always leverage through state grants. And so I shared a couple of the state grants down below as examples, 2 of the larger awards that we've received in the last 6 months from the state for really intentional programming. But again, without our roles in place to implement those plans, that funding can only go so far. And so our partnership with you all is just so integral to everything Ready Schools, K-12 at RBB. And so the next slide that you'll see that's titled Finding Our Why. This is again, that foundation. Everything that we develop, we put through this lens of our purpose, right? Our reason for being here as educators is to prepare our students for the world around us. And so Simon Sinek's golden circle model is what we really use to frame that purpose and then to establish strategic goals on top of that. And then what we often share with you, the fun stuff, opposite the data is those individual strategies, what this looks like day to day in each of our schools. And so that's what I'm really excited to let Megan give you a much deeper look specifically at the junior high and the work that they're doing there in each of those strategies through this same model of both project-based learning, which is our vehicle for empowering our students and our teachers both. And of course, our why is to prepare them for what comes next to be able to contribute to our community. So from there, everything else should hopefully look and sound familiar to you. And starting with slide 8. Megan is really going to drill in and hopefully give you a much more in-depth picture than we've given you thus far to the junior high specifically. And then, of course, we'd be happy to answer any questions from there.
So yes, really happy to be here. And our students and our level at the junior high is a really special age in that we are really bridging between childhood and adulthood and really helping our students, our main goal that what we are trying to achieve with our work in our STEM labs and with our PBL units is to really help our students become creators, critical thinkers, and problem solvers really through this very authentic and relevant. So they really see the relevance, they see these connections to the outside environment and potential careers, both in our region and beyond. So we hear a lot that these are some of the skills that we hear from employers and regional community partners, that they want students who can take on problems, that can communicate, that can work in groups, that can problem solve. And our students get that sense of investment when they see the relevance and the authenticity. So that's really kind of our through line. That's really what we try to have be our thread that runs through everything that we do at the junior high. And we do that. We kind of broke this down that we have ways that we achieve this with working with our students, with working with our teachers, and with working with our community. And obviously these overlap, but we have some strategies that apply to each of these veins of our various stakeholders that we work with in our schools. So we're going to just touch on some of these things that we do at the junior high level. And we are really fortunate to be able to have the flexibility to take on this structure because of having roles like ours, like Jamie said. So a lot of this is enabled through having roles that let us form these connections and support teachers and students and our community members in this way. So we are lucky to be able to be open to all subject areas. This is not an elective that students take. This is not a special that they go to. This is very interdisciplinary. It is open to all of our students. And when I say this, I mean our problem-based learning approach to teaching and learning. So we work with teachers across all subject areas, and we may be working with individual students. We might be working with small groups, or we might be working with entire classes or even entire grade levels. It really just varies depending on the need and the situation. So that lets us be very reactive to what the context calls for. We work with our teachers through ongoing PBL cohorts. So we know it's not a one and done type of thing. And Jamie and I just got done with another cohort where we are working with teachers who have even had quite a bit of PBL training, but we know we need to just continue to work with teachers and support them no matter what, if they're just beginning or if they're fairly far into PBL. We do a lot of interdisciplinary planning in our building, and we do a lot of tool and application training for our teachers as well. And then we work with our teachers on understanding how design thinking overlaps with PBL and having teachers be able to observe each other and observe lessons in our space and in their classrooms that help them see how this might fit within their classroom domain. With our students, we do a lot of work with helping them understand the tools that are available to them, as well as software applications and certifications. We try not to take an approach of learning tools for the sake of learning tools. It's more learning if they have a purpose that they are trying to achieve, then we want to have the tools available to them to help them achieve that goal. So we have certifications and trainings that we've developed for our students to help them get certified in both of those things. We use Project Lead the Way curriculum, which is in computer and health sciences, also aligned to our pathways that we know are prominent in our region. And that is a very problem-based learning approach to their curriculum as well. And we have several PBL focused rotational course offerings. So we have our Edge Media, which is our media production class. We have a design and entrepreneurship class also tied into one of our pathways that we are building K-12 journalism class, and then app creators, that computer science vein as well. We have an Ed Shop student-run business that we had a group of seventh graders start to build out last year, and they went through the process of developing a business plan that they submitted and doing market research and really laying the foundation for this business that they have ownership over, as well as that will help us continue to maintain our lab. So they have now passed that over. They are now eighth graders and have passed the baton to a current class of seventh graders who have also taken our design and entrepreneurship class. So that helps them kind of see the full circle of how we can support our lab, but also have their ownership over it, where they really have a say in what our design looks like, our marketing, our finances, all of that kind of communication that's going on with that. And then we also offer some after school options for our students in coding and robotics and design thinking. Yeah, working with our community, we are always looking to make connections with our regional partners and with community members to, again, bring that relevance and that authenticity for our students to their PBL units. So everything we do in PBL, we really try to help our students see how this connects to possible career paths in our region, and help them develop those 21st century skills, those employability skills that we hear are what they need in order to succeed, and something that we do, but we don't always explicitly talk about. And that's obviously tied into our graduate profile, as well as something we just are making more explicit with our students. We host regular career panels, again, aligned with our pathways in our junior high. And we work with our STEM community partner advisory panel that is made up with mostly parents, but who work in STEM fields to help us they give us feedback on how we're doing in our program and help us have insights into what, from their professional perspectives, what we could do to grow our program and continue to improve. We work a lot with our Success School, our community foundation partnership. They are just such a fantastic resource in our community, and they have been just invaluable with their tours of opportunity, the STEM fair, reality store. They go above and beyond to help make that bridge between our community and our school, even at this junior high level, very, very present for our students. Our next steps that we're looking at the junior high, we really want to start making our career exposure to our students even more explicit with what we are basing it on something we've called a career cruise model, where they will have really explicit time to dig into possible careers at the junior high level and really start to think about how it might connect to their interests. We are also looking at a model that we've seen where students partner with corporations, where they are developing problems that they really see in their industries and bringing them to the students to get their ideas on solutions. So it's kind of like PBL, but then beyond, and giving that this is a real partner. They really need to go and present to them. They really need to go and have their ducks in a row. They're not just presenting to their seventh grade peers. They are presenting to an audience that is really going to be taking their feedback to heart. And hopefully, at the same time, we are helping our students be exposed to what they're seeing in their region, and just what opportunities both for education and employment are beyond high school. We want to work to increase our certification. So building on what we're doing here to what will be offered at the high school, and the value that is within those certifications, that they can carry those beyond their K-12 years, helping them just be more marketable in the fields that they're looking to go into. And just a lot of the work that we do at the junior high, like we said at the very beginning, is just kind of being that bridge between their exploration and their interests and their passions, and as children and as young adults that they are kind of just exploring and dipping their toes into, and really then bridging over to when they become those young adults at high school level into adulthood, even where they're starting to make decisions and seeing what could be a possible viable career path for them moving forward. So it's a great age. I know sometimes middle school sounds scary, but it is a very, very fun age. And we're really excited about what we're doing. And yeah, that's pretty much it from this end.
Well, they're very curious, that's for sure.
They are, they absolutely are. And I think that's sometimes overlooked at the middle school level, but they really are still kids and they really are very curious. And that's one of the great things about teaching at this grade level. So, yeah.
Jeff, is there any way that we could have shown these, especially the color, on the screen at some point?
Well,
When you repeat it or something?
I think what will happen is we'll put the full on our website, on the Redevelopment Commission website, so people can go there and look for it.
Okay.
Technical difficulties,
Which
we can overcome those with time. And so I'm sure
there's
we can.
typically links embedded, so that could be even better. Maybe a silver lining.
Okay, good. So you have this already on?
Mhm.
Okay, so maybe that's what you want to do.
Well, I have it.
Yep.
That's how we got it. And I sent them the link and they're having trouble with it. So.
Oh, too, so that's the thing.
You know, I just really wanted to focus on the junior high tonight. We have elementary work that we're doing that hopefully we can highlight and focus on down the road. But it's so important for everybody to understand that our efforts are not just a high school program. We are building this K through 12, a career readiness from K through 12. And we continue to have those important conversations with our local businesses
Good.
so that our graduates are prepared to go out and be the excellent employees, excellent candidates for future jobs. One story I just want to take a second to tell, I think it proves a point here. So our student-run business, which is a coffee shop,
Oh, yes.
they've been open in the mornings, but they are starting to expand and open at.
Is it actually running now?
It is.
Yes.
Okay, I guess we'll have to go over there sometime.
They are operational.
So our Director of Nutrition Services today was a little worried because we didn't have very many customers today. And with her years of experience, she's just really started to list a bunch of action steps that we should take to increase that business. And I said, well, that's great. That all sounds wonderful. But really what we need to do is propose that problem to the students
Sure.
and let the students arrive at solutions. And how are they going? What is have them identify what's the problem? What are some possible solutions? And as adults, sometimes we get a little frustrated because maybe the student-run business isn't progressing maybe as quickly as we want to as adults. But we have to remember this is all about learning for the students. And so am I glad maybe we didn't have great participation today during lunch for the coffee shop? No, but in a way that's good because the students can learn from this, and that's what this is all about. Very good.
So when is the coffee shop open now? Will you resolve your problem?
They are open at arrival and then through the lunches. So arrival time is early at Edgewood. So the lunch hour would probably be more marketable on Wednesdays and Fridays. They are open from, I just put it on Dr. Sanders's calendar today, so I should have the times memorized, but about 11:30 to 1 on Wednesdays and Fridays is a surefire bet. They start closing down just a little bit before 1, but if you ever want to come in, you just check in at the front office. And we even are working on a mobile app now. So our junior high and elementary teachers came over during those first lunch hour shifts and quickly asked, are you going to be delivering to the other schools? We have a campus structure and you better believe we're going to figure out a way to. So we have a staff member that's willing to be that transportation piece. And the kids are working with the Square software that a lot of vendors out in the world use and working on that mobile platform so that you can order remotely.
and the students are being paid now.
Mhm.
So
That's even better.
in fact,
Yeah.
some of them are going before the board, school board Monday night to get approved as employees for the
Good.
coffee shop. And we do have, we're looking out to the future of expanding our student run businesses. So we'll have more exciting things to share with you down the road. One other thing I want to point out, as Megan was talking, so many times I think we have the misconception that our design labs, our STEAM labs, that the teachers are sending their students to the design labs like they send students to music and art classes. But with what we're trying to do here is Megan goes and meets with a particular teacher. They discuss maybe a problem that they would want to address with their students. They collaborate on the classroom teacher and Megan collaborate on possible solutions, get the students involved, and everybody comes to the design lab. Maybe not at all times, some at the same time, some are back in the classroom, some come to the lab, but it's not where the teacher is out of the picture. The teacher, a classroom teacher, is directly involved in this work because we want what they're doing in the design labs to enhance their teaching of the standards and preparing students for the next level, next course, and eventually going, like I said, out into the workforce and being successful there. I just want to point that out to you.
Mhm.
Any questions?
Colin, since you're the business person, do you have any thoughts?
Well, and we work with the program and early on with Edgewood Media, Edge Media, interning basically with our video production, and they do a fantastic job. And we could tell they do the videos for the recipients for the Ellisville Chamber Awards. And so, the past couple of years, we can see the improvements made over time with their production quality and editing, the whole thing. And that's what it's about. And I think that the community has really embraced it. It's as a grad of Edgewood myself, it's pretty cool to see because you're taking up those spaces, and you talked about it, kind of a mindset in terms of education, that it's not like extracurricular. This is the future of education and workforce. They're in the old shop area at the high school and the old drafting and shop area at the junior high. But it doesn't mean that that's, those are vocational type things. It's just the future of workforce. And I really appreciate that. I think you're doing a great job. And look, I know it gets busy at drop off. I understand it all across the campus. So, you may have some good, if you can find some runners, or the mobile app, you'll have success. But that's a perfect experience because that's where they learn. The summer job network or system is just not as strong as it used to be. So this is a good way for them to gain that education. It's real time, real money. And I think this is fantastic. So props to what you all are doing. And I think it's great. They got to go through all the paperwork and bureaucracy that the rest of us do. That's this is how it works, guys. So, but just finding out too what jobs are coming at Westgate. Those are high paying advanced manufacturing jobs that they need people.
That's right.
And so it's not that far of a drive, and you can still be home. There's a lot to be said for that. So this is a fantastic investment.
And I think we're transforming education because more than ever before, we are trying to keep our pulse on what is going on in the business world. Jamie Miller and I were just having a conversation about computer science.
Because of that announcement, Brad Tucker shared one of the press releases about the development down around Westgate and the base in general. That was what was the impetus for the conversation.
So we're having those conversations of, what are we doing in terms of computer science? And what are we offering? What do we need to offer? What experiences do we need to give students? Because of this trend in computer science. So I think it's important for us to be flexible to
That's right.
adjust what our programming is to meet what's going on in our community and our business world.
Yeah.
And we'd also be remiss not to mention just the value of the region that we live in as well, right? You all have made this investment in us, but as a part of the Indiana Uplands and the regional cohorts that we participate in, there's more of a sense of regionalism among the 15 school districts that we consider our region
Right.
than ever before. And we're able to call people up and go on best practice visits and, email colleagues in other districts in ways that a lot of the dynamic and the landscape of education would really typically lend itself to. That's something that ROI and organizations like that have built in the culture in our region, because Westgate isn't that far away, but it's a couple counties away, right? Typically, that wouldn't have maybe been considered our jurisdiction, but it's gone are the days that that's out of reach for our students. So preparing them for the regional workforce, even beyond our local community, is something that we're certainly learning continually as educators.
Right. And no doubt there will be some ancillary jobs,
Mhm.
hopefully many within the West Side.
Mhm.
So the areas that we have jurisdiction on
Mhm.
as an RDC within this TIF, the various TIFs we have, we can find some good sized employers because,
True.
there's only a certain amount of land and a couple of those plants are going to take up a lot of land down in that park. But there will be a connection. There will be a tie between Bloomington and Monroe County and the folks down at Crane. That's really how it's going to work. And now that John Fernandez is running the trades district, he's always been a region guy, and he's always been a fan of Ellettsville as well as Bloomington and the entire region. I think there's a good ally there too, as well, because you're going to see investment in those jobs as startups, and they've got to go someplace. And the trades district, I think, is going to be a great place as well. So lots of opportunity. Really.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
I think
Yeah.
Commissioner Shelton has his hand.
Oh, Jim Shelton.
Well, hi. Yeah, Jim Shelton. This is very exciting. I agree with Colin. You guys are doing great. I worked at Crane for a long time. I can remember Steve Howard when he was the commanding officer, emphasizing regionalism. I can remember Dave Reese, who was the first civilian executive director, talking about how we need to get people in this area to study STEM. He spoke in terms of engineers because he said engineers beget engineers. And when we hire engineers, we want their children to be able to get the kind of education that you guys are getting them started toward to be an engineers, because it's a lot easier to hire somebody from around here than to recruit somebody from one of the coast and pay to bring them back here. And then they're more likely to stay. So, and then the practical experience they get, I am a big, not fan, but urging people to consider the soft skills, because, and they will learn them by doing these things. They will learn to work in a group. They will learn to communicate and work how to play in the sandbox, which are really important for any technical or other kind of business they get in. So I'm just really, really pleased with what you guys are doing with your partnership with us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I would just like to say one thing. When we were invited, I think it was last year at this time, to tour the facility. And I know Iris and Cole and I went on our day, and I don't know if one of the others is. It really helped put the context of everything you just said into place, right? I could see that working. And I really want to thank you guys again for inviting the
That's
RDC to come.
very important that everybody make sure they see what you're doing, not just hearing.
Well, you're welcome, and we could do that again sometime.
Yeah, welcome anytime, definitely.
Be
We'd
great.
love to have you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, keep it up. Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Terry.
Okay. Reach bearing gifts. Okay, item number 3, funding request regarding the MPO urbanizing area review. Having participated in one of those many years ago, I know a little bit about what this is
I
going on here.
Sure, you did. So I did bring the professional with our MPO staff, Patrick Martin, to answer any further questions. We had an agreement back in 2012 when they hired a consultant then that Monroe County and City of Bloomington partnered on for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Now our 2050 plan is coming due. In 2020, the MPO staff had to take it upon themselves to do a transportation plan. It was very time consuming, overwhelming, to say the least, with all their other tasks. So the city of Bloomington has looked into going back to a consultant route. So of course, we are within an MPO area. Our TIFs are within an MPO area. Fullerton Pike and the West Side TIF. I have a sample of the agreement that was done in 2012 that I'm more than happy to forward to all the members. So I am here to have Patrick answer any questions on what this transportation plan does, how it benefits the county in the urbanized area. And if it is interest of partnering with this, how it would be funded. The only way that I could see would be splitting it between the two TIFs, between the West Side and the Fullerton Pike TIF. I believe in 2012, it was 175,000, not to exceed 175,000 for that transportation plan. I'm guessing we're expecting more of a $225,000 to $250,000 range for the overall plan this time around. So if you want to add anything, Patrick.
No, thank you for letting me be here today, and thank you, Lisa, for inviting me.
That's it.
Thank you. My name's Pat Martin, no relation. And I'm the Senior Transportation Planner for the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Bloomington Monroe County Metropolitan Planning Organization. There's a long history of partnership with Monroe County and the City of Bloomington. Also the town of Ellisville, not in a financial way, but just a partnership with Bloomington and Monroe County on funding the metropolitan transportation plans. The 2035 plan, which Lisa alluded to, was completed, completed in somewhere around 2008, and then 2012, I think it was December 30th, 2012, there was an agreement signed between Monroe County and City of Bloomington to fund what was called the 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. For the eligibility for federal funding, federal transportation funding, the Metropolitan Planning Organization is required to have a unified planning work program, an annual unified planning work program, a 4 to 5 year transportation improvement program. And then on top of that, they're required to have at least have a metropolitan transportation plan with at least a 20-year horizon. In January of 2020, we began the update of the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, not knowing that a pandemic would strike just a month and a half later. So the staff, that was a staff initiated effort. Myself, Ryan Clemens, and Beth Rosenbarger helped on it too. And this focused instead of on a travel demand forecast model, which is extremely expensive, it focused more on what I would call a non-technical update of transportation, long-range transportation issues for Monroe County and also for City of Bloomington, Town of Ellisville, Bloomington Transit, and Rural Transit. The primary focus was on the urbanized area, which is defined by the Bureau of the Census, and which also is the area that's eligible for federal funding, federal transportation funding, as defined by Federal Transit Administration and Federal Highway Administration. Focused on that, but we also had considerable input from outside of the urbanized area for the balance of Monroe County. How did we do that? We initiated a community-wide survey. The survey, we had it open for
approximately 2.5, 3 months. Survey response was 459 respondents with a series of questions. And from that, we were able to define exactly what the priorities were in terms of the entire community. And when I say community, I say Monroe County and the urbanized area. The priorities were, and then also we identified what were called the needs out there, the unfunded needs. And some of those unfunded needs, one of which was the major bridge tax was out there. Some of those needs came to fruition. Some of those needs are still in the pipeline. Vernal Pike Extension, Fullerton Pike Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. Phase 1 and Phase 2 have been completed, but Fullerton Pike Phase 3 is still in the pipeline, and that's coming to fruition and two. And then safety projects such as Old State Road 37 and Dillman Road is still out there too. But we have a number of needs that are out there in terms of the county. The citywide focus has been more on what I would call spot safety improvements, downtown curb ramps, bicycle and pedestrian trail extensions, a lot of what I would call pedestrian amenities, and a focus more on transportation efficiency. Bloomington Transit's focus has been on a complete reboot of the system, where they will convert their entire fleet. I think it's by 2028 as their target, convert their entire fleet from diesel into a total electric fleet. Be careful what you wish for there, because what that means is that they will, and they just completed their strategic plan last month. Their electrification of the entire system will require considerably more space than what they have now. They've outgrown their space, so they need to expand, they need to relocate. They also need to look at a new fare system, a fare study, I should say, because the fares haven't increased in a number of years, and we've gone through the pandemic on that. And then also their Bloomington Transit will be examining what I would call a Phase 2 and Phase 2 Green Line study, which would be an express route, some type or another, from downtown along certain specific corridors out to Ivy Tech and other service areas, which they don't currently service because of state statute. But that gives you an idea of some of the things that we're looking at. I brought old-fashioned paper copies of the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which came out of our computers with considerable input. This was reviewed by Indiana Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration. We also had public comment on this for a 30-day period, and those comments are all included in the back of that document. And all of this feeds into what I would call the Transportation Improvement Program. The current Transportation Improvement Program for fiscal year 2022, 2026 encompasses $167 million. That's with an M, $167 million worth of capital improvements. That includes improvements by the Indiana Department of Transportation, Monroe County, City of Bloomington, Bloomington Transit, and Rural Transit. And for those projects to move forward with federal funding, they must have an underlying long-range transportation need. So given all of that that's just the prelude. Given all of that as the prelude, staff advised City of Bloomington last year when they were developing the budget in May, June of last year, that we would need possibly a technical model update or a non-technical model update. The request that we made was $225,000 to $250,000 for such of a cost, based on what the 2012 study was and adjusting that for inflation. And then what we received in terms of funding from the City Council was $100,000. So as a result, we're a little bit short. But then there's also the initiative too that we want to make sure that we partner with Monroe County or give Monroe County the opportunity to be an equal 50-50 partner in the long-range planning process. So my purpose of being here today is to give you a background. I'm not asking for money, but to give you a background and consideration on what the need is out there and how it would take place. We would begin a what I would call a RFP, request for consultant proposals, in July 1st is the start of the new state federal fiscal year. We begin the RFP process in 50-50 consultation with Monroe County representatives. And then we would go through an evaluation process, a scoring process, selection process, and then also a negotiation of what the components would be for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And then a schedule of work and delivery. We would hope that the schedule of work would include another community-wide survey of at least 400 to 500 community residents. Community, I say, meaning Monroe County and the urbanized area. We would hope that it would include that in the non-technical update. And then the plan itself also must fulfill all of the federal planning requirements. The federal planning requirements are quite extensive now. They build each year with each new federal funding bill. The new federal funding legislation, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, affectionately known as Bill, BIL, spells out a number of new initiatives in there, which give Monroe County and the urbanized area and the city of Bloomington and the urbanized area access to new carbon reduction program funds and also environmental protect funds for environmental resiliency. The legislation also has a major focus on what's called Justice 40, public participation, Title VI focus for minority populations and engagement. There are a whole host of issues that are out there that must be addressed. But given all of that on the way of background, I'll take a breath right now and give you time for an ample set of questions.
Well, it's been a long time since I've been to one of those meetings. When I was president of the city council, I think I was on there.
So you did a non-technical update to a 4045.
To the 2045 plan was a non-technical update. And the reason for that was that we only had access to the 2010 census data. The 2010 census data. And when we began the initiative in January of 2020, the census hadn't taken place yet.
Right.
The census took place in April after the students left.
I know,
So
it's always the case.
yeah, it was a matter of bad timing is what I would call, where the federal requirement was, you must do this now. You shall do this now. And so we said, okay, that's fine. We'll do a non-technical update. And it worked out surprisingly well, because what we did was we referenced the technical aspects that we had from the 2010 census using a very extensive travel demand forecast model. Travel demand forecast models showed a prediction of, and I hate to get into statistics here, but it was an R squared of 0.89. So it showed a high degree of correlation in that the model highly replicated what the travel patterns were for the urbanized area. And that high level, extremely high level of replication, and this included public transportation and highways, by the way. This high level of replication showed us that travel in Bloomington is highly predictive. We're a compact urban form. We've grown up instead of out. And as a result of that, there's only certain pathways that people seem to travel to and from work or non-based work or home-based or non-home-based type of transportation trips. And given that, we were reasonably confident that we could proceed with a non-technical update And we received permission from Federal Highway, Federal Transit, and from the Department of Transportation in that aspect. And then in the summer of last year, after I made my initial request for 225,000 to the city of Bloomington, we began intensive discussions with the Department of Transportation's technical staff and asked them, would we be required to do a technical update to the 2050 plan, even with the new census data being available, the 2020 census data being available? And the answer came back, no, you would not have to do a technical update. You could get by with a non-technical update because we are a small enough area, small meaning 110,000 is the number which was just published by the Census Bureau. So our urban area is 110,000. It only grew from 2,000 people between 2010 and 2020. I don't necessarily believe those numbers because they conducted that census when the students had already left. So we may have lost another 40,000 or so. But that's okay. It's what it is. And we have to live with it until the 2030 census. So yeah, the non-technical update, we can proceed with that. We've got their blessing with that. And that's what we intend to do. I don't know that many consultants out there. I mean, we have no preconceived notion of what firms would be interested. We have absolutely no favorites whatsoever because we did it ourselves this last time. But there's an extensive knowledge base out here in the community in Monroe County with the commissioners, with the highway department, with City of Bloomington, Public Works, with Bloomington Transit. Their ridership pre-pandemic was somewhere around 4.5 million passengers a year. Rural transit, their needs are a little more modest, but they serve a very crucial element of the community. And in fact, they just a few months ago on their website, Rural Transit's website, they have all of their documentation available in Mandarin Chinese. And also Bloomington Transit has theirs available in Mandarin Chinese. We do not, we have, the MPO does not yet. We have translators available in case there is an interest in doing that. And we'll make some sort of an automatic adjustment for that as the need appears. So again, that was a long answer to a short question.
All right, let me get back to the dollar.
Sure.
In 2012, we did a split. You know
Yes.
what the split was?
50-50, and I can't remember what
It's not to exceed 175,000
okay.
It was 50-50 of 175.
if they exhausted the
Yeah.
contract, yes.
And I took the 175, made the inflation adjustment based from Google. And the inflation
Even
adjustment,
if we do a 50-50 and you only got 100K to stick in, we're
well,
still short.
well, no. What we're going to do is we'll just tell the consultant not to exceed 200,000 is what we'll do. And we'll dictate the terms on, I hope we'll dictate the terms on what the plan would comprise with what I would call a heavy focus on public participation. And the public participation element doesn't necessarily have to be in person. It can be virtual. Given that, and then cost estimates, another element in there is cost estimates for the projects that are identified in terms of future needs. Those can be done by staff to save elements there. I mean, the last time Monroe County projects were estimated by county highway engineer, and the estimates developed for the city of Bloomington were done by the city engineering department. I mean, they're what I would call more order of magnitude type of estimates. They're not precision. They just give you what I would call a reasonable range. So there are a number of elements that we can do ourselves.
Your department or does the planning department have sufficient resources to do the survey part of it? That's
question.
on a per piece of information basis. That is the most expensive piece in any of these plans. And if we can do that in-house, that's a big savings.
And we very conceivably could do it in-house now that we know how to do it. I mean, we did it last time and it was somewhat of a learning experience. But
Well, and you did it at a very awkward condition.
oh God,
So, I mean,
oh my God, yeah.
when you say you got 450 people responding in a community this size, I wouldn't even call that representative of the community.
Well,
It's just the people who know that it's out there and
Yeah.
you're doing it.
Yeah. Statistically, it was valid.
Consultants aren't going to do the kind of publicity that's necessary to get people in, participating, and that's a function that we can do locally that they won't do.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And in fact, the plan documents the extensive list of resource agencies we contacted. I mean, it's not just your average resident that's out there. We went to all of the critical resource agencies that are out there, service agencies, extensive amount of service agencies here in this community because we care. But we went through an extensive effort. And it was not only calls, emails, follow-ups, answer questions. I mean, the whole 9 yards.
Let me give you my take on this.
Sure.
When we're going to do a 50-50 split on the cost. When we have funding that comes in, the majority of that cost isn't split 50-50. The majority cost goes into city projects because that's where the population is. So we end up with the county paying not a disproportionate amount because those people in the city are county residents as well.
That's right.
But to many people, it looks like the county is paying for city projects at that level. So we need a way to address that issue so that it's clear how this split is really impacting all people in the community in Monroe County, not just one segment or another segment. And that when we have an MPO area that we designate, that's for a technical situation. It's not a strategic decision that's made because the strategic decision is made at the county level, not MPO territorial. The goals that we have specific are within that particular targeted area. So there's a nuance there that we need to get across to people that justifies why we would invest $125,000 in this effort. Because otherwise they're going to look askance and say, why did you spend that money?
If you go back and you look at the transportation improvement program, going back to Bill Williams as county engineer, it's actually been pretty much 50-50. And in recent years, it's been more skewed toward Monroe County than the city of Bloomington. But we don't look at that. We're indifferent in terms of, we look at it in terms of needs. We don't look at it in terms of jurisdiction. And we look at it in terms of what applications do we receive? And if the applications come in, those are the ones that are, use the word adjudicated. Those are the ones that are examined, and those are the ones that end up being funded. And then we, the MPO staff, doesn't determine which project. First of all, we have to have fiscal constraint. Can't ask for more than what you've got. That's a federal requirement. But we, the staff, don't determine that. That's determined by in consultation between the three primary parties, four. Bloomington, City of Bloomington, Monroe County representatives, Bloomington Transit, because they get a part of that too. And then rural transit is what I would call an outside.
One of the things you indicated that is very true is as we have pushed our density to be more constrained, we now have an obligation to provide transportation services for that more constrained population, which are different than the transportation services that we're going to provide for a broad-based urban suburban type of community. The county builds roads to service our suburban communities, whereas the city's not building a lot of new roads, but they've got a lot of maintenance, they've got a lot of lane adjustments, they've got a lot of mobility issues that they have to deal with because of the high density of people. So the nature of the effort between the two is very different at this point.
Yeah, and that's what I was alluding to, is that Monroe County has focused on projects like Fulton Pike Phase 1, 2, and 3, Vernal Pike Extension, Vernal Pike Bridge, what I would call major connectivity corridor type growth, which you need for 20, 30, 50 years from now. And then the city is more focused on what I would call maintenance and preservation. I would also say modernization too, because a number of the primary corridors, principal arterials, and some of the primary collectors are antiquated. They don't have sufficient drainage, don't have sufficient sidewalks, they don't have bicycle pedestrian facilities, they don't have full, what I would call safe accommodations for ADA type passengers. And some of them don't necessarily meet Bloomington Transit's needs for the service population that they have, because they have ADA representatives too. Right. And therefore, if you have a route that lands at a certain stop and that stop's not of standards, then you've got to do something about that. Yeah, there is a completely different focus there on both of those. I'll readily admit those. But if you look at the balance of projects that have been funded, and that's not something that we ever do. We don't go back and look and say, who got the bigger market share. Instead, it's based on needs, whatever the needs are out there when the needs come in.
Okay, Jeff, what would be our timeline for giving our sense of what we want to do or are interested in doing or can do?
Well, I think if they want to make a decision, or are you going to begin the process July 1?
We would begin the process in July 1. I'm just now telling the Federal Highway, well, our funding agencies, Indiana Department of Transportation, Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration. I'll be sending what I would call our work program documentation to them in March, outlining exactly what we're going to do, but that has what I would call a draft budget. And that draft budget doesn't come final until, got it here, May 12th is what we're looking at. So we've got plenty of time. I just wanted to make sure that I got with Lisa early enough. I didn't know this until 2 weeks ago, that the council had approved $100,000. I thought I was doing it in-house myself again. And so it was somewhat of a surprise.
Yeah, I would, I think our commitment, in all fairness, should occur prior to them coming to a conclusion on their RFP process. You know, you can't, they shouldn't sign a contract unless they know the funding of it. And
I don't want to be involved in that process.
Oh my God, we would want you involved in that. Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
So I guess the question then becomes, when do we get our review from Caritas at all about how much we've got available?
That like Mark.
22nd.
Isn't,
Well,
2023 is our crunch year when we had at least excess available.
well, you could do, I mean, just thinking out loud here, you could do a memorandum of understanding, where City of Bloomington has 100,000 up front, and then county would come in later on. And actually, in the city,
How long do you think this project will take?
less than a year.
Less than a year, but it would be, if you start in July.
Shoot me if it takes
It
more
could
than a
be
year.
that the real need for money is in 2024, not 2023.
It would be, it actually could be in the first part of calendar year 25. I mean, because we would start the RFP process July 1st. I'm just thinking out loud here, start the RFP somewhere around July 1st, go through the RFP, give them a response period of I don't know, 25, 30 days, go through the evaluation review process, then you're talking another 30 days. Negotiation process, contract, another 30 days. And then they would start work maybe in September, October, somewhere around in there. And then the bulk of the work, and then they would have the kickoff meetings and all of that. And then the real bulk of the work actually would be the latter part of this calendar year 24. And the first part of calendar year 2025.
I think that eases it up for us a little.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No. Yeah,
Well, we have a real crunch this year.
Yeah.
But next year, I think we're a little better off.
Yeah. I mean, there's no urgency on this. I mean, urgency.
So we would start this off with a memorandum of understanding then? Is that how we would begin this, or do you just need a resolution that we want to participate?
I think I'd asked him what he's looking for. I think ultimately, before the ink gets signed on any agreement with any vendor, we would need a memorandum of understanding. I think, if I'm hearing it correctly, that if we, after our annual report next month, if we feel that we have the capacity and the will to go ahead and help fund some part of this, then I think letting them know before they even kick off that July 1. I mean, I would let them know if you're interested by July 1, and then work out the details as they're going through their optimistically 3-month process to get an RF.
So we would be able to tell them after next month's report
yeah,
whether or not we were comfortable and to what extent we are comfortable.
well, and look at it this way too. We've got the bird in hand already with 100,000 from city council. And that's calendar year 23 money. There's no guarantee about calendar year 24 money at this point in time. So calendar year 23 money, and we would put that into the budget with federal funding, 100,000 in there and 80% reimbursement on that, or work out some sort of another arrangement. I mean, I haven't talked to legal counsel, our legal counsel, about that at all. I mean, that's one of those things that we just don't know yet. And that's why I'm here only for what I would call background information.
And I think we'd share this with our county council and commissioners so that they're thinking about it as well.
If we have the means, it's a prudent thing for us to do. We have to, we'll know more about that next month.
Yeah, and I mean, here's another way of looking at it too. I mean, in the urbanized area, you've got the residential elements, and then you've got the commercial industrial elements. The commercial industrial elements are all on the west side. That's why Vernal Pike is having the extension. That's why the Fullerton Pike is having the extension to get the home-based people to the employment centers that are out there. And that's the reason also for Bloomington Transit looking at
Significant local match.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a match made in heaven, because you got the high concentration of residential here, and then you've got the commercial industrial there too. And they're all not that far apart in terms of the compact urban form. So that, I mean, there's the influence right there. And then you've got corridors like Curry Pike, which could use an upgrade in the city section. Dare I say it? And then, key critical intersections out there too. I mean, the Second Street corridor of Interstate 69, the what I would call the Cars Farm extension. What are we calling that? I can't remember.
Liberty Drive to Cars Trail.
Liberty Drive to Cars Trail, because what we're doing is we're promoting non-motorized transportation as much as possible. And then also public transportation via Bloomington Transit and Rural Transit and BT access.
Well, I guess kind of the one thing that's in the back of my mind still is that we would like to make sure that should we do a residential TIF, that area could be somehow within MPO. So we would have access to potential funds for major roadway projects in that area.
I mean,
And it's a density issue now because we
Yeah.
don't have the density, but we are certainly looking to stick it there.
As a former redevelopment commissioner 20 years ago, I wholly agree with that. I mean, what you want to do is you want to incorporate in the residential and the commercial industrial as much as possible. So that way, when the needs arise, we don't know what those needs are going to be. We have a guess, but we don't know what those needs are going to arise, are going to be. And we also don't know what the residents and the businesses and the industrial magnets, if you will, are going to say also about what the needs are that are out there. And then another area that we've not focused on previously was truck routes or freight movements in the area. That's been the silent partner in all of this. There's a big federal initiative right now on freight where we need to look at the west side, what's coming into the west side, what's going out of the west side. Where's that going to in the residential, highly density residential area? I mean, it's not going back and forth out there. It's coming in here and going back out there. So, yeah,
Seeing big trucks coming in
Interstate.
17th Street now.
interstate and interstate and intrastate type freight. So there's another complete element it's touched upon in here, but it's not really examined fully at this point in time. So there's a lot out there. There's a lot of meat on this bone.
Okay.
Richard, I have a question though. Tell where I'm talking or not. There was some discussion about the legislation about BCT going outside what now is the corporate limits. I don't know if that's moving along or not and what effect that will have. That's not on there.
I don't keep track of what's in the legislature and
Right.
what's not.
Well, I understand.
Otherwise, I would lose my mind.
So that may make some difference. 'Cause I know I have some people who are looking for extension within the corporate limits right now up north, but I
Blue-
can see this other part too.
Bloomington Transit's strategic plan, which we, the MPO, partially funded. Bloomington Transit's strategic plan was adopted by the board
Right.
in January, just last month. And it calls for servicing outside of, it calls for an active engagement with the legislature to change the law.
Right.
So that way the Public Transportation Corporation can service outside of the municipal limits. And I believe a majority of the city council is probably in favor of that. I know the county commissioners and county council is in favor of that also. Service out to the employment centers that are out there and also to Ivy Tech. That's been a long need right there. So, the need's been recognized.
Some of our.
It's just a matter of getting it through the legislature and personal opinion is it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Because typically you bring something for the legislature, count 5 years.
Well, the other thing is that BCT has been asked to expand more towards the end of the corporate limits. I'm thinking about North Cascades and all that area.
Oh, yeah.
Because those folks are really
Yeah.
wanting to have some service up there
Yeah.
and they don't have it.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Your point about freight, I'm glad you brought that up because that was going to be my question, because it seems like in all the discussions about transportation, whether it's through, MPO or just in general, as we're experiencing now in Ellisville as well, we're back at it again. That the freight does seem to be you say the silent partner. I think that's a good way of putting it because it does, from my perspective, it seems to be a missing piece, and we don't want to, as we talk residential, we want to be careful, of course, to not mesh the two together because those trucks, and it's kind of painful to see those trucks have to make the turns that they have to, or they have to depend on somebody backing up from that left-hand turn lane in order for them to make a right turn, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that that's under consideration. The feds have also recognized it because it makes a difference. I think it seems like it throws no pun intended, it throws a wrench in the wheel of everything that we try to do. And oops, we forgot the big trucks.
Well, and this plan, the 2045 plan I did, we pulled the covers off and showed that the city ordinance is totally antiquated. And then the county, it's just whatever a state route is. And also Curry Pike and Vernal Pike, and that's it. I mean, there is no organized truck route network system within the city or the county of the urbanized area. That is, I don't know outside of the urbanized area, but it's a big need.
Yeah.
And it's something that has to be totally coordinated and discussed between the city and the county of where do we want these people to go? Because there's been a huge change since 2010, the just-in-time inventory and the growth of what I would call express service, FedEx, UPS,
Oh my God.
Right.
even things like meal deliveries.
Yeah.
You know, and I know IU, Indiana University, is a huge generator, a tractor. They're a tractor. Yeah, they're not a generator of truck freight services. But I made an initial set of calls to the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce last year, asking them for information and their expertise, and there was none. And there was little interest. Also, I'll be very candid here. So it's something that, and I didn't grow up in the community, so I know the community, but I didn't grow up in the community, so I don't know who the generators, the tractors are out on the west side, but I sure know that they're with Catalent, you know, the proposed expansion, non-expansion, then in the expansion again with Cook continually showing great strength out on the other side.
Right.
And then other areas that are undeveloped that could be considerably redeveloped or adaptive reuse out there. I mean, there's just so much potential out there that we haven't begun to recognize what the freight needs are out there and where they should, what routes should they be using, because that impacts not only safety, but it all impacts the maintenance preservation of everything that you've got.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other point you brought up about the express services, that extension of that, yeah, they're going to move further out because people are going to order all the time. And so those roads are constantly going to be used. But it's the big trucks that, that make the impact. So, the semi-tractor trailer combinations and also what I would call the box truck deliveries. Double park out here every Tuesday morning, 7:30 a.m. or downtown area, but then also I'm sure it's happening on the west side too. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Let's say, hey, this is Randy. I got a question. Lisa, you mentioned the west side and the Fullerton tip. Where's our fiscal situation where we can afford to do this and participate accordingly? Is that the two places we have the money?
That's why we decide we would take this under kind of like an advisement until we meet with FSG in March and go over the next year's financials. We wouldn't be making any commitment today.
Okay, the commitment today is simply a matter of taking all the information into account and seeing where we are. At the present moment, you're looking at to have an equal share as the city is committed $100,000 that we would be looking to commit the equal amount. Is that a correct statement?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to ask for money today.
I understand that. I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate very much the information and everything that you shared. It's extremely important and very detailed. And I do definitely appreciate the way you went into the details. I just wanted to get down to the end result of what we may have to make a decision to do as soon as possible in order to keep this moving in the 2040 plan.
Yeah, I mean, a decision would be advisable this calendar year of some type, and when that would occur would be, that's up to the parties. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Like I say, I didn't realize you had such detailed information. It's wonderful. Appreciate it, Martin.
Sure.
That's how it goes.
Any other questions for our guests?
I guess
Thank you very much for coming.
Sure.
Appreciate the input.
Sure.
And if you could
Stay
send.
tuned to next.
We may see you next one.
We'll have a little more information by then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can come back anytime that you want me to come back, or we can do, yeah,
I'm
and,
glad you did it.
You have that
Month.
electronically on a
We would-
website.
oh, yeah.
If you
Yeah.
could forward me the links and I could forward them along, that would
Please.
probably be better
Yeah,
than
Yeah, and,
paper copies.
and in fact, that's what I intended to do, but I thought maybe some people would want old fashioned paper, but
I
yeah,
might take one.
I only look at paper documents.
okay. Okay, that's fine.
I
well-
have more trouble looking at them.
I am of a certain age that I prefer paper. Even though
I
I,
deal with
yeah,
a lot of documents.
Yeah.
And the ones that I
see some
don't have to
text
read
that I
right
probably
away,
could miss.
I like this one. So
Yeah.
I can determine when I read.
yeah. I mean, now we can do it actually, but yes, I will send you the links.
That'd be great.
And I will also prepare for you a short one-page background memorandum.
Yeah.
Yeah, not 167 pages or anything like that.
Thank you very much. Thanks for
Okay.
Pat. I'm glad
Yeah.
you're working
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah.
Sounds like you got a good grounding of the whole situation.
Thank you.
We've been at this so long.
Yeah,
Okay, moving along.
Thank you.
What's that? See you later.
Okay. So we've got this letter that Patrick and Lisa sent. Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is the comments that we were going to make to the plan department as a result of the presentation from Jackie at our last meeting.
Oh,
As I committed at that last meeting, or we had talked at that last meeting about identifying some particular parcels that are in TIF areas where we'd like them to think about zoning them a little more appropriately to our interests. And I said I would prepare a letter or a note about them. And you should have those now. There is one for the 46 or for the west side TIF, which identifies two properties out on, that's west, that's West Vernal Pike, isn't it?
this,
East of Print Pack. But it is essentially surrounded on three sides by employment uses in this kind of magenta purplish color. And it is now being used as agriculture. But it in the current comprehensive plan, it's designated as an employment area, even though they've designated it as an AG 2.5 acres, which to do any employment activity would require a rezone. And we could maintain it at essentially its current light industrial zoning, which is what it has now, simply by having them, when they adopt it, change those to LI rather than the AG 2.5. And there are actually three designated, what do you call it, descriptions, but they're two of those have the same parcel number. That's the 530426 100-70011. And that's the parcel at the top, plus that little blip piece, which is in the middle on the east side. And then there is the 426 104-0411, which is the lower parcel of those two. And I drafted a letter quickly indicating that these parcels are in the TIF, that they are surrounded on three sides by light industrial uses, and that it would meet the objectives of our TIF as an employment area if they would become a light industrial zoning, which I think is what that, well, maybe it's limited. No, it's light industrial, which is what the rest of the TIF is designated as. It's either light industrial or heavy and industrial. So that's the first letter. The second one is for the north for the State Road 46 TIF. And the parcels of interest to us there are not within the current TIF, but are in the area we had talked about as a potential residential TIF. And if they are in a going to be put into a residential TIF, they would need to be rezoned from the Ag 2.5 for any significant residential use, placing a burden of cost on the developer and upping the cost of the homes that are going to go there. So that to meet or to work toward our affordable housing objective, zoning those so that they are in a residential zone similar to the zones that they adjoin would be beneficial to our future TIF. So you'll see that the black area on the west, which is south of Arlington, there's a series of parcels in there, which they had as Ag RR, and it's surrounded by everything but Ag. It's got the PUD to the south. That portion of the PUD is residential. It's got residential to the north. It's got general business to the west, and it's got a suburban suburban density to the east. The other one, the larger green area, is made up of quite a few parcels in there. There are a couple of big ones, but a lot of small ones, particularly along Acuff Road there. I think it's Acuff. Not sure what the name of the road is, but there are quite a few of them in that area. But there are several large parcels, and there are some stubs into that for future residential development. And you'll notice that it is essentially surrounded by non-Ag RR property. It is part of the PUD on the east. There's a medium density residential to the south, medium density residential to the north, and medium density residential or suburban density to the west. So making that a medium density, which is the residential density to the north and to that little one area on the south, would seem to make sense if we were going to put that into a residential TIF. It would mean that we could actually get some people in there and perhaps start a project in there without having to do a great deal of expense in a rezoning effort. So I wrote that in this letter as well and identified the parcels. And that's the second one we would send to them. Did I do what I was told to do?
Thank you.
Yeah, Richard, good.
Thank you.
Yep, that works, Richard. Let's send that forward and try to get something done so we can keep things at a cost-effective basis to get this moving. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm willing to go to the plan commission when we send letters and go and talk with them about it if they want to do so. I think the Ag RR one on the existing west side is probably fairly easy to convince them that ought to be the limited business, light industrial. We may have a harder case on the other one, but I think that given the surrounding zoning, it makes sense to make these consistent with the surrounding zoning rather than force a rezoning to occur to use the property for residential use, which is what we want it to be anyway. So it would unnecessarily burden whoever's going to develop it with another fee to do that. And that certainly doesn't work toward our objective of affordable housing. Where we can, we need to cut the costs. So do these letters look sufficient to everybody?
This is the first time I've seen them, Richard, so just now.
Okay. I think
read
it'd
them
be-
earlier. I think they're really good.
What's that?
I
If-
said I read them when we got the packet, and I agree with Randy. I think they're really good. Let's send them.
Anything we can do to help cut through the regulations so we can get the costs down, so we can have the affordable housing and workforce housing we need in our community is a benefit. So appreciate you taking the time to do that, Richard.
And having watched the meeting on cats
Huh?
from last, having watched the recording of the meeting on cats last month, this is, yeah,
Okay,
this pretty much sounds like what I heard.
all right.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion or are you just going to do it?
I think we would need a motion for me to send these letters.
Okay.
Well, I move that we authorize Richard to send these letters on behalf of the Redevelopment Commission to the Planning Commission.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to send these two letters to the Monroe County Planning Department. Jeff, did you call the roll?
Commissioner Martin,
Yes.
Commissioner Kiesling,
Yes, I'm sorry. It sounded something different, like eating.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Shelton,
I'm
Yes.
plugged up for some reason.
Commissioner McCarty,
Yes.
Commissioner Cassidy.
Yes.
Motion is approved 5-0.
Good.
I'll work with you, Jeff, to get letterhead and stuff. Should we do a CC to the commissioners on this?
Yes, I think.
Yes, I would do that. Definitely.
All right, I'll work with you on that. Okay. Next up,
So when you think you need to take the, are you going to just send it and then follow up with a presentation or what?
I'm going to send it as soon as Jeff and I can get it together.
Okay, good. Great.
Yeah.
Thank
I will
you.
be out of town next week, but he and I can work by email. There's no problem.
Right.
We'll get it done. Okay.
You're better than I am.
All right, we have a very patiently waiting fireman over here. You are up now.
And maybe I'll give the preference for the introduction to this.
Yeah.
I think as the RDC, we discussed this last fall, where the fire station that is within the boundaries of our West Side TIF district needed some update and repair for both the building and the grounds itself, particularly the driveway, so that the trucks can get in and out. It was requested that I look and see if this is something that TIF is eligible for. I looked it up, spoke with some attorneys, spoke with other people who've done this. This is something that other TIF districts are really comfortable doing, and it seems to meet the criteria necessary for the use of TIF funding. I did ask Mr. Patton to update the numbers so we can know we're looking at as current numbers as we can, given this day and age. And so roughly between the doors and the redoing the asphalt drive / parking area, it's about $55,000. And so that's kind of the request is from the Ellettsville Fire Station can we get some support from the Redevelopment Commission for this purpose? I guess at some level, I think 55,000 is something that, we probably have. But again, next month's our annual report. So that might be a better time to make a final decision on whether this is something you guys want to do.
Right. Would you care to tell us what you're doing here?
Sure. Good evening. I'm Kevin Patton. I'm the new fire chief at Ellettsville. Been in that position for about 6 months, so relatively new to that. I've been with the department for 35 years. This is a project that Chief Corman had started before he retired. And as was stated, the parking lot, the fire station was built in 1970. And it serves Richland Township as well as the town of Ellettsville, but it's over on Curry Pike, across from the old Wetterall. Everybody here will know where that is. Anyway, the parking lot we've had it fixed 2 or 3 times over the years. and as well as the front doors. The last time being when the tornado removed the roof from the station. So we're looking at trying to keep the station going. Obviously, there's the unknown with the city of Bloomington annexing. As you well know, the West Side TIF and the Curry Profile TIF are both our primary jurisdiction. And then the 46 TIF, part of that's in ours, but we're the first responding agency to that area also. So basically that station serves that, and we're asking for some assistance with that. So, you know, we're to a point where the town spends all their money and Richland Township, as with a lot of places, we've been struggling trying to keep staffing. And with a roster of 12 career firefighters, we had 9 change last year
Oh, my gosh.
due to going to places that paid better, had, you know, larger benefits, so on. So with the 23 budget, the town was able to increase the salaries and some benefits and got us more in line with everybody around us. So that's taking care of that. But with that, funds are just limited. So the town of Ellisville has agreed to do all of the labor, removing the old parking lot, disposing of it, all of these things. And basically what we're asking is if you guys can help with the material cost. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you may have any.
Okay, so the material costs you're talking about are the 10,300 for the doors
Correct.
and the roughly 35,000 for the asphalt.
Correct. The removing of the old asphalt, cutting the dirt down, because obviously that when the trucks were in 1970, they were considerably smaller and lighter. The new ones are heavier, so we are going to cut it down. The town will take care of all that work.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. This is just for material acquisition, and the town's going to take care of all the labor. And
That's correct.
Okay.
The only part of the labor that is in here is the town's paver, I think, is only an 8-foot wide paver because they basically just do the alleys and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be the paving of the parking lot would be done through E&B paving, which is who the town has the contract with them. So they've already negotiated the costs and whatnot. So that portion of the labor is in there.
Gotcha.
okay. Well, in order to ensure, you know, proper fire protection.
I'm sorry.
I said, in order to ensure proper fire protection and participation in the county as a whole, I would make a motion to approve.
Well, I would second, but I think we need to have some kind of, well, we need to know where we stand next month. I mean, I agree with you totally, Randy, that this is much needed, very appropriate. I can't try to outguess annexation. Curry Profile is not going to be annexed by their agreement with the city anyway. So, and Lord knows how long it'll take to settle that. So
What's your time schedule?
Depends on funding. So obviously, you know,
You want it to go as fast as
sure,
you're ready.
but I mean, you know, if it's a month, 2 months, whatever, that's okay.
Well, I sense that we're in favor of this. We're just a little gun shy until next month.
Where
Sure.
the money is.
That will not cause any issues with us. That's not a problem.
Okay.
They're good for asphalt too, so.
Yeah, actually, when we did submitted quotes last year, and then we got new ones, and I was very surprised the asphalt actually went down a little.
Yeah.
Enough that I called, questioned it. And just due to the fuel prices down, so
Okay.
Right.
I was surprised.
Good. Well, NISA might reach out to you to call the asphalt plan for future projects.
Good deal.
Yeah.
So somebody tell me what the actual costs are gonna be.
Randy, you made a motion.
Yeah,
To-
but
approve these. You want to make that motion subject to a positive outcome at our budget review next month?
yeah, let's amend it to the positive outcome of the budget review in March.
I'm in my second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve this expense, subject to our review of the budget at our meeting next month. Can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Martin,
Yes.
Commissioner Kiesling,
Yes,
Commissioner Shelton,
Yes,
Commissioner McCarty,
Yes.
Commissioner Cassidy.
Yes.
Motion is approved, 5-0. Great.
Thank you.
good luck.
Okay.
And I do have, if you have time, if not, I will get put on the agenda later. I just wanted to make you aware of a situation that we've kind of found coming up. I have to look at my notes because I'm not like Mike Foreman. I can't remember everything. In 2006, we purchased a new aerial for that TIF area. And the TIF give $235,000 for that. The factories put in a little, and then of course, Richland Township and Ellisville paid the rest. Then in 2012, you guys actually bought an engine for the TIF at that time and paid for it completely. And that was $437,000 and some change. It's amazing what these things cost. We're going to need, this is just kind of for future thing, we're going to need to replace one that's a 99. So what we found out a couple weeks ago, that to order one now, they've told us to expect a 24 to 36 months delivery in getting one.
Yeah.
So, which I think that's quite a long time.
Okay.
But the issue I'm running into is we're completing paying off one we got in 21, and I'm trying to come up with some creative financing, because what the issue, obviously, we're not going to have that paid off in time. So they've suggested doing a interest only loan to start the process. And so I'm open to any suggestions you guys might have, things that you think of that I'm not, like I said, I'm relatively new to this. And
All right, you're going to need to get Jeff
okay,
information on cost and schedule, so that when we look at our budget,
okay,
we can say, oh, in 2024, we're going to spend, we want to spend this much money on this fire truck.
okay,
So we can put that as a line in and see if we still have money left.
sure.
How long could you wait?
Well, if I wait until I will have the current vehicle paid off in 3 years and 6 months. If I wait until that time, then that vehicle will be 29 years old. The problem we run into when apparatus,
Certified antique.
yes. And are you familiar with the ISO? Okay.
Yep.
I assumed you were, but when a fire engine becomes 20 years old or older, they don't even recognize it.
All right.
Even though we still do the annual test and all that. So that's, the other thing. So no, it's not a,
Right, just get what information you can to Jeff, so when we
Yeah.
talk
I will,
about our
thank you.
budget, we can
And I
do
got-
that.
and if you order it, do you pay for it when you order it, or do you pay for it when it's delivered?
no, you don't have to pay for it when we order. Obviously, they like that, and they very definitely give you a discount. The last one we ordered, it was almost a $60,000 deduct in paying up front. And that was when you could get them in 18 months. So I'm not sure what.
That's a good thing to know too. Thank you.
Yeah,
I guess
My hearing's
given
not real
the
good.
20-year question,
Mhm.
you may want to, if you've got a 2006 aerial and 2000.
Aerials are a little different.
Okay.
The ISO will go 30 years on those as long as they still pass test. When we ordered that in 06, It was $849,100. I did ask what that vehicle would cost today, and they told me 1.7.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
If that 20 years, right? Because I think
It
that one,
doubled in 20 years. That's
I
amazing.
remember the discussions when in 2012, and that one was purchased specifically because of a lot of the taller, higher buildings,
Correct.
longer buildings that are in the West Side TIF. And so that was one of the proponents to making that investment at that time. And so
Right.
that was going, I knew it was a fairly expensive piece of equipment, but that is also something that I think the ISO ratings would have a definite impact in that for the development of that.
Yeah, and like was mentioned, if the city continues to annex in the Richland Township portion, as you're aware, Cook's signed an in lieu of annexation for theirs, so that will still remain the jurisdiction of Ellisville Fire. So that'll be a challenge. We'll end up having to relocate a station or something, at that time, but so
Well,
we're going to be on the west side for a
There's
while.
still going to be TIF
Yes,
that'll be in your jurisdiction no matter what.
yes. Okay. Thank you very much for your
Okay.
time.
Get information to Jeff and we'll.
I will do so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, next claims. We have claims submitted. We have 5 items. We have a legal expense of $1,900.28. We have an RBB CSC payment, which is the fall 2022 payment of $126.6436. That's the balance of what we paid previously, subtracted from $270,000, which is our limit. And this is the remainder to be paid. We have a DLZ. This is inspection on Vernal Pike, I assume. Right of way for DLZ work on Vernal Pike for $18,048.99. We have a couple of Old National Bank fees for the Hunter Valley trustee fee. I asked you about that for $1,000, and the Old National Bank West Side 2013 bond fee of $300. Let me go back to that Hunter Valley. What are we paying on the Hunter Valley trustee?
Yeah,
Have we borrowed money yet?
I think we have borrowed a little bit of money yes, I think that for a lot of the design work, I think it's coming through there. We also borrowed some money for the closing costs associated with that debt.
Okay. All right. So, and this is an annual fee?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So that's their projected for the annual fee for the total amount of the bond then. Okay. All right. So our total is $148,313.63. Does anybody else have any questions?
no, you just answered my question about the Hunter
Well,
Valley.
You had the same one.
What's that?
I was agreeing. I was wondering what that was too. I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah.
So I move approval of these claims totaling $148,313.63.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims in the amount of $148,313.63. Jeff, would you please read the roll?
Commissioner Martin,
Yes.
Commissioner Kiesling,
Yes,
Commissioner Shelton,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarty,
Yes.
Commissioner Cassidy.
Yes.
Motion is approved 5-0.
Okay. Next up are the minutes from our January 18th meeting. Succinct summary.
I have,
There is a recording of the meeting.
Yes.
It might be useful if we would put that notification in
I
the
have,
minutes that they are available as a recorded meeting.
that's a good idea.
And as I said earlier, I did watch that. Thank you, Katz.
Are you needing the motion for approval, Richard?
Yes,
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the January 18th Monroe County Redevelopment Commission meeting. Jeff, please read the roll.
Commissioner Martin,
Yes.
Commissioner Kiesling,
Yes.
Commissioner Shelton,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarty,
Yes.
and Commissioner Cassidy.
Yes.
Motion is approved 5-0.
Okay. We are up to staff comment. Lisa. Have you got, she has that look in her eye.
Yeah, not a good look. So our vernal pipe project, along with the bridge, went to letting last Friday. And this is not uncommon these days with the way everything's coming in. Our engineer estimate was 11.17 million for the road and the bridge. The lowest bid came in at 13.7. So it became unawardable for NDOT to award that project due to the difference in funding. Because they're not going to, if they can't, they don't have the option to allocate more funds to it. They can't rely on the LPA to award it at that point, that we can come up with that extra $2.5–3 million.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. So I talked to NDOT. We decided to move that to an October letting so that we can see where our financial records are with FSG. See if we have to go back to the point of bonding for that project, kind of see where we're at. And it bites us a little bit of time until October. It does move it into a different fiscal year, but as long as we can still come up with our local match, NDOT will move the funding that they've allocated to construction, and construction inspection is $9,854,000. We just did that contract about a month ago with the commissioners to increase that funding. So that's kind of where it's at. It was so we do not have a contractor. It will not be built in 2023. So we will just take the next step again. And looking at the projects over the whole state, it's not the first project, won't be the last project that is becoming unawardable or having to move out to a different season. Some LPAs are having to move their projects out to 2 or 3 years just to see if prices will eventually come down. So we're going to go with an October letting. Trees have been cleared. There's no utilities really to relocate. So the project will just wait until our next step.
Are there any
See.
project specifications that can be changed?
So at this point in time, our consultant has reached out to central office. Apparently the way they can go over the bids is with NDOT to see where those differences are in the numbers. And if it's just due to inflation, or if it's something that was overlooked by our design team, or something that was not needed or included in the bids. So at this point, there were 3 bids. The highest bid was a little over 15 million. And they'll pull actually the lowest bid and see where those differences are. So it tells us if we need to make changes to our project or if it was just inflation.
Okay. Where are we on the property issue?
That is still in, 2 of them are still in condemnation. We've asked our attorney and for the condemnation to pull the bids of the parcel 3, I believe it was the high T property, to pull those appraisals and compare those differences to see where we're at. I believe there was an offer on the table that was due by February 3rd. Jeff and I both denied moving forward with that offer. It was not coming even close down to what our appraisal was. So we felt it was in the best interest to take that next step and see what the difference is in the overall appraisals, because I believe it was $1.8 million difference between our appraisal and what they had. So.
Yeah.
So that gives us a little bit of time we can move forward with the project because we have deposited funds into the courts. So that's why we were able to go in and do the tree removal.
Well, there's nothing we can do at this point.
Really not.
So we just have to wait and stay tuned.
Yeah.
I think the important part of that is that we did make that deposit so that we can access the property and perform work. It's a matter of ideally it would be settled, but it's not the reason we're going to slow down the project.
Correct.
We have the legal ability and capacity to get on that area to do the work.
And I think a good, there's so many times that you cannot move a project right into a different fiscal year, especially of the magnitude that's been allocated to this project from NDOT, which is just under $10 million. But it shows their commitment to it. I was really surprised that they were letting us move it to a different fiscal year because it's my understanding with all these projects, you never want to go to letting in the month of May. The contractors are already set for the year. You get really high prices. So I was thrilled that they let us move to an October letting and still keep the funding.
Good.
Okay.
And if there's any other project you want to know about, Fullerton Pike, right of way is complete. Utilities have been given the notice to proceed to move the utilities. That goes to letting in July right now. Indiana Department of Natural Resources has a new type of permit. They're still trying to iron out the technicalities of that permit and the requirements. It might move the letting date a little bit later, but it wouldn't change it in the fiscal year, really the timeline of the project.
So not when is the letting now?
It's in July 2023.
And other things, how are we doing on our sample road?
Sample Road, we had our progress meeting today. We have some utilities in the way up there a little bit. I reached out to REMC today to try and get them to respond. Other than that, they're ready. They finished the ditching. All the riprap's been placed. They'll just wait until the asphalt plant comes in. They'll monitor the erosion control. And then they have a little bit of work with Vectren at 037 and Sample Road. But other than that, we hope when the asphalt plant opens, we'll get the asphalt laid and get it striped and guardrails in. It's
good.
Moving right along. Bicentennial pathway, that's not in the TIF, but that will begin. We have our pre-construction meeting on Monday for that project.
Good.
So.
Okay. Jeff, anything from you?
Well, I would ask TSD if Breanne Gregory is part of the meeting or not, if she's an attendant. She is with the auditor's office.
Hi, Jeff, I'm here.
Okay. I guess the one thing I wanted to make sure we covered is in last month, we talked about corrections based upon the grant funds and how the State Board of Accounts has asked us to do that. Bree is here to answer questions. I think the big picture, if you don't look at that $2.7 million, which we've paid, what we had done is we had contemplated transferring the money from the West Side TIF to this grant fund and then paying it. That just ended up getting paid out of the TIF fund and just avoided that transfer. So that occurred. Outside of that, there were approximately $174,000 that we spent out of grant funds that were transferred into those that have kind of gone through that same process. It's just reversed so that it just looks like it's coming out of the West Side TIF district. And I have Bree on in case I'm saying anything wrong, because this is sort of bailiwick. And then if you have any questions that she may be able to answer.
Yeah, and this happened
Yes,
with a few of our grant funds. And I think the difference was, which my department probably didn't explain really well, is we create the grant funds because they're reimbursable grants. Some of the phases of the project are locally funded. So if it's locally funded, say for design or right of way, the funds have to come straight from that funding allocation, not out of the reimbursable grant. So that's where it got some confusion. We all worked together to create these grant funds back in like 2020, I believe. We were all new to the process. So we thought it was all to be paid out of that one line. But that was our confusion of now we're just trying to work back and get those, work with the auditor's office to make those corrections.
And the other concern that the RDC had at the, I guess, December meeting was how do we tell how much expense for each project if we're paying for it out of Fund A and B? Our auditing software and our financial system allows us to give each project a project number. So no matter what fund it comes out of, you look up that project number and you can see the total cost. And I think there's been a commitment to begin implementing that for particularly for highway projects.
Yeah, and it's very true. Actually, I was on the phone with Angie last night, trying to figure out what works for the auditor's office. Highway has to keep their own set of books. So we're not overwhelmed with so many different numbers, but we've been working in our department with our software firm to maybe come up with a field where we can put in a project number, tie it to all of our contracts, and then that would make it easier for the auditor's office too, to use that project number. And then they could just pull that project number. Doesn't matter where it was paid out of, it would kind of tell you the total cost of that project. So we're just trying to tweak it to make it right and work for everybody, but not put more work on auditor's office or highway, but make it all click together between two software programs.
I understand what's supposed to happen, and it's complicated when that was not the way it was going before, but hopefully it'll be easier after a while once everybody figures out what goes where.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. I think we're talking to Angie last night. We're close. It's just making those final little tweaks to work for everybody.
Just have to know that each person who handles either one of those.
This is the state side.
What?
Commingle
Right.
grant funds with local funds.
Correct.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
If it's not
I think the problem is that each person.
It should not be a transfer of money problem.
Well,
There's no reason to move the money.
Correct, but none of us, the auditor's office didn't know that, say, all the design was locally funded. I think sometimes if you're not familiar with the NDOT process or something, then you don't realize that not all of it's 80-20 or a 60-40 split.
Right.
That you try and build a project and it's all locally funded. They had no idea to know that it had no federal funds until maybe construction.
And I would say that you're pretty much correct, except the fact that the state, and I'm glad Bree's on the phone in case it says that 20% that we're responsible for must go into the grant fund. So there is a transfer of the match money, but not anything in excess of that. So what I think the big confusion lied in is the project, what goes into the grant fund, or is it just the match in the
Correct.
Yeah, or if it's just the match, right? And we looked at it and I think we believed that the state was telling us it's a project-based transfer where in actuality, they've clarified that and it's only a grant-based.
Yeah.
Jeff, that's exactly. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good, Bree. Go ahead.
Okay, you guys are explaining it perfectly, and thank you for having me on tonight, everyone. So yes, there was just, I think, confusion about actually what a local match was, and then definitely from my office perspective, we were unaware of, like when something wasn't funded out of the grant or wasn't partially funded. So now that we're kind of all coming together, we're figuring out these last pieces that need to be aligned so that we're doing things exactly as the state is guiding. So I think we're, like Lisa said, getting very, very close. And this was just one of those pieces that was missed previously in 2020 when this process began.
Well, quick comment, Brianna, Lisa, Jeff, I appreciate you guys taking care of it. And I assume by next month, you'll have everything coming together with the four of you to make everything work appropriately. So we got the proper accounting.
I think those corrections have been made. I think they were discussed at the county council meeting last night. So I think this is a issue that we wanted to make sure that the RDC was aware that had occurred. And so if they do look at a transaction history or anything with any of our TIF accounts, they can kind of remember, oh yeah, that was that issue, because it will look different than
the problem will occur at the end of the project when you only have enough money in the grant funds to pay part of a bill, and the other part of that bill has to get paid out of local funds that are match funds. That's when the problem
issue.
Yeah. And I think when you have different people doing different things, the message doesn't get out very well as to this is what should happen. This is the rule. And I think one of your people in your office probably has better handle on it than people in the auditor's office.
You know, the auditor's office and both financial managers do a great job. But they track things differently. We look at things of, you know, when it's paid or when it's not paid, when it's spent. It's just a totally different way that we have to keep our books versus what they will need to audit. And because we have our own audits.
Right.
So it's just trying to bring the terminology together to where everybody understands. And I know we don't explain it well because we deal with it every day, but you take it for granted that somebody's not dealing with that terminology every day. So that's where we just reached out to our software company today to say, hey, we want to be able to do this. Can we do this? So we'll get there. We'll get there.
Good. Well, it's very complicated. Always has been and will continue.
And that's the whole thing. It's I think everybody's goal is how do we do it? But not, there's so many numbers to track in auditor's office world and highway world. You just don't want to keep creating more numbers to track for everybody and get more confusion. So we just want to make sure it's right going forward. And I think now that everybody has an understanding of how grant funds work in the auditor's office and us, we won't have these types of situations moving forward.
So I hope so. That's true. Good. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, any comments from the commissioner?
I don't have anything at the moment.
No comment here.
What's that?
None.
Jim Shelton has no comment.
Okay.
Okay.
Looks like Randy is off.
Anything from you?
He's gone already, I think.
Okay.
Good job, Lisa, Richard, and everybody trying to get this put
Good
together.
meeting. Thank you all for
good meeting.
participating. Thank you folks for attending virtually. Lisa, thanks for coming and helping out on things. Appreciate it. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Thanks.